What's good, everybody? It's the Klein with Cap show. We got UFC 302, Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. This is a star-studded matchup. And then we got Sean Retard Strickland versus Paulo Costa. I can't wait for these fights. I mean, Islam, obviously the current champion at 185, the lightweight champion. And Dustin Poirier, I mean, he's put in the work. He's been in the UFC for over a decade. What a career it is for Dustin Poirier. 30-8 in his career in the UFC. Put on some big fights against McGregor many times, even though he lost to McGregor way back in the day, his first fight against McGregor, but he lost to Khabib, Oliveira, Gaethje, Michael Johnson, Eddie Alvarez. You know, lost to some people, but overall, we look at the bookwork. We look at the work that Dustin Poirier has put in the UFC. It's been amazing. He's a first ballot UFC Hall of Famer, 100%. He will get inducted into the Hall of Fame once he retires, and Poirier's already talking about retiring after this fight, win or lose the belt. So, that's going to be interesting to see how this develops. Obviously, he's a big underdog, plus 500. Right now, it's about plus 490. That's going to change come fight night, but I'm looking at Islam, and, the work's been cut out for him. He's 25-1. His only loss is from a punch, and he got knocked out pretty clean. And that's interesting to match up, because if Dustin Poirier beats Islam, it's by knockout. It's not by grappling. Islam eventually is going to take this fight to the ground. I'd be surprised if Islam doesn't shoot for a takedown within the first 1 minute of the fight, dude. He's got to. This is a 5-minute, 5-round fight. So I think Islam's got to shoot for takedowns. He's the better wrestler. And against wrestlers, we look at Poirier. He's not really good against wrestlers. He's just not really a good grappler. That's isn't Dustin Poirier's fight. He wants it to keep it standing. He wants to bang. He wants to throw left and right hooks. He wants to go to the body. That's what Dustin Poirier wants this fight to do. He wants it to be standing up. But if I'm in Islam's corner, who's getting trained by Khabib, shout out to Khabib, what a legend he was in the UFC, I think he's training him to say, hey, we're going to grapple this guy. We're going to shoot for takedowns. We're going to take down Dustin Poirier, and there's nothing he can do about it. And that's what Islam has to do here. He beat Volk twice. His second fight, he beat him by a leg kick, which was pretty awesome. We look at Islam, and we didn't realize he had good stand-up like that, but his stand-up is getting better. Since he came into the UFC, it's been day and night difference. And first time I seen him was when Islam did lose. Back in 2015, got knocked out. Ever since then, he's on a 13-fight win streak, 11 wins by submission for Islam. So Islam, he's the current champion at 155. My thing is with Islam, if he wants to say he's going to be the GOAT, so to speak, move up to 170. I'd love to see Islam fight at 170. Better competition, bigger guys, and that's just how it is. I mean, Khabib fought at 170 once or twice in his UFC career. I like when guys go up in weight. We look at the true gladiators. Even Max Holloway said it once. The true gladiator doesn't walk around and say, hey, how much do you weigh? Let me see the scale. No. The true gladiator is going to fight anybody. That's why I think eventually it'd be nice to see the UFC have a division where it's no weight class. No weight class whatsoever, so we could have a 155er versus a 205er. Mind over matter. That's what I would love to see as a fan, right? Even though somebody might get killed doing that, but I would love to see that. No weight class at all, but I just want to see if Islam over here saying he's going to become the GOAT, pound for pound, number one, go up to 170. That's what I want to see Islam do if he beats Dustin Poirier, which I do think he's going to beat Dustin Poirier. I think he's going to take it down and just utilize his ground and pound against Poirier. Now, Poirier does upset win because we thought Sean Strickland was going to beat Israel Adesanya, and then obviously Israel Adesanya had a bad fight and really lost that fight against Sean Strickland. Nobody picked that, right? And it was similar odds to this fight, to the Islam Dustin Poirier fight. So that's interesting. A lot could go wrong in the UFC. It's so unpredictable. We could sit up here and say, yeah, this guy's gonna win by this and that, but it's one mistake is all it takes. Literally in the UFC, one mistake, one slippage, one fall, you're done. That's it. One blink in the armor, it's over with. So I think Islam, he's going to handle business. He's going to do his thing. If he beats Poirier in a really good fashion, move up to 170. That's what I want to see. I want to see Islam go up to 170. I love it, man. But I like Islam over Dustin Poirier right now. Like I said, Dustin Poirier's done great things in the UFC, great business for Dana White and the UFC and company, put on the McGregor fights, huge fights. I remember watching the McGregor fight back in 2021 where McGregor snapped his leg against Dustin Poirier. And it looked like McGregor was winning the first round. And then obviously he snapped his leg, couldn't finish, doctor stoppage. You know, we see what McGregor's about. I mean, still, McGregor's the biggest draw in the UFC. He hasn't fought in about 3 years. And he's fighting at the end of June. And it's already sold out, booked out. So shout to McGregor for changing the UFC for the better, to changing fighters to get paid more. If it wasn't for McGregor, fighters wouldn't be getting paid as much as they do right now. So we got to give homage to McGregor. But Dustin Poirier, like I said, put on some big fights in UFC. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Win or lose this fight. Even though I do see Islam winning this fight right now just by submission or just by decision and just utilizing his ground and pound throughout the fight. That's what's going to happen. Islam's going to shoot for takedowns, and he's going to succeed, even though Dustin Poirier, like I said, a legend. 16 wins by knockout in the UFC. What a career he's had. I like Islam with the edge. And then we got the middleweight bout, Sean Retard Strickland versus Paulo Costa. We saw Costa. He got raped by Israel Adesanya. Ever since he got raped by Israel Adesanya, he's not been the same fighter. He really hasn't. He just lost to Robert Whittaker back in February by decision, even though he has 11 wins by knockout. It's just like, man, Costa looks like he's roided up, looks like he's taking testosterone shots in his ass, like, before he fights, dude. It's like, yeah, you got a cool physique, bro, but you're still getting knocked out and raped inside the octagon. So what good is your physique going to do when you can't take a punch? Like, for real. I'm looking at Paulo Costa and saying, bro, like, he's more worried about what he looks on IG than what he does in the octagon. It's like, come on, Costa, stop drinking that magic juice, stop doing the steroids and testosterone shots, and start to man up and become a real fighter. Because I think if Paulo Costa loses this fight, it's like, well, what's next for him? Like, straight up, like, ever since Izzy raped him, he has not been the same. I'm telling you right now. But Sean Strickland, 28-6, he lost to Duplessis by decision. He lost his belt. That was his most recent fight. In that fight, he kind of just looked like he was going through the motions. I'm looking at Sean Retard Strickland and be like, bro, like, it's time to step up here. Like, you're going to have to get more smart IQ. And I don't think Sean Strickland has the greatest IQ ever. You know, it's crazy. He lost to Usman back in 2017. He got sparked, KO'd by Pereira back in 2022. He got literally KO'd. It's crazy. I mean, a lot of these guys want to talk smack about Pereira. I'm telling you, he's going to put your lights out. He literally does, and he put Sean Strickland back to the realm, dude. It's like, dude, Sean, bro. It's like, it's time to go back to high school and learn your ABCs, dude. Like, straight up, learn multiplication, because right now, Sean Strickland's looking at stars after the Pereira fight. It was like, oh my gosh, dude. He even got more retarded after that fight. It's like, dude, that's all the brain cells lost from that fight, dude. That's crazy. That's probably 3 or 4 years out of your life right there alone. But, you know, Sean Strickland, I do support Sean Strickland. I think he's going to win this fight. Even though I call him a retard, I do think he's got some bright things about him. I do think, you know, I'd love to see him fight Jake Paul eventually next year sometime. What a joke Jake the Snake Paul is, fighting Mike Tyson, who's like 60 years old. It's like, come on, bro. You really that money hungry to sell a fight? Like, that's crazy to me. But Sean Strickland, he does not like Jake Paul. I'd love to see that fight. I really do. I think UFC fans and even boxing fans would love to see these two retards fight. It'd be great. It really would. But I think Sean Strickland's going to beat Paulo Costa. I really do. I think he's going to spark him. I think he's going to knock him out. One of these guys are going to get knocked out. I don't see this fight going by decision. Absolutely not. I just don't see it. Like, going to the decision with these two guys, there's no way. There's no way in heck, dude. But Sean Strickland, 11 wins by knockout. Same thing with Costa, 11 wins by knockout. Very similar schedules and how they fight. Just kind of unorthodox. Sean Strickland keeps his hands down, protects his body, which I think is a mistake. It's like if you're in a fight, in a real fight like the UFC and MMA, you want to protect your up. You want to protect your chin, dude. Like, you're gonna get hit in the chin, so like it makes sense to protect your chin. You should already have a strong core in being a UFC fighter, but it looks like Sean Strickland just like eats whatever he wants. Looks like he's eating popcorn for snacks, eating Doritos, eating all types of munchy foods. It's like there's no core in Sean Strickland. There's no like six-pack. He just looks like he's been drinking beer on a beer diet, and he probably walks around about 200 pounds. So he probably cuts about 15 pounds, and it's just like, dude, I'm looking at Sean Strickland and saying, hey, if you want to get your belt back, you got to knock out Paulo Costa, and that's the way to do it. I think if he knocks him out, he's going to get the winner of Duplessis and Israel Adesanya. That's going to be interesting, right? And I think Israel Adesanya is going to spark Duplessis. You know, Izzy's had some time off, which he needed to, but I think Israel Adesanya is going to retain his belt back. I do. I think eventually in the future, we're going to see Israel Adesanya, the 185er champion of the world, eventually. That fight has not been announced, but it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. but I like Sean Strickland over Paulo Costa by knockout. Take off Sean Strickland. Let's go! And then we got Kevin Holland versus Michael, some dude from Poland. Can't pronounce his last name. He's plus 215. I'm going Kevin Holland here. You know, Kevin Holland, he's a vet in the UFC, 25-11, won no contest, put on some big fights. I remember watching Kevin Holland fight Chimaev. You know, he was talking crap backstage a couple years ago. He got mopped up. Within a minute, he got choked out. That was it for Kevin Holland. But, you know, really, he put on some big fights. He lost to Michael Page. Lost to Jack Della, you know, and like I said, Chimaev, but he's got 14 wins by knockout, 12 first-round finishes for Kevin Holland. So I think Kevin Holland's going to handle business and spark this guy. I think he's going to win by knockout, even though this guy does have 11 first-round finishes. You know, his most recent loss, Michael's, was to Michael Pereira. So that's all I know about this Michael guy. I really don't know much about him, but I do know what Kevin Holland can bring, and that's quickness and hands. He can bring that to this fight inside the octagon. So I think Kevin Holland's going to handle business, and I think he's going to stand up with this guy and knock this guy out. So I'm predicting at least 2 knockouts on UFC 203 on the main card. Now, the prelims could be different. You know, we look at the prelims and realize, man, some of the prelims are better than the main card. Like some of the fights, how the fights develop, you know, the hunger in each fighter. We get to see that, right? You can kind of tell the hungry fighters from the non-hungry fighters. The hungrier fighters are going to go the extra mile. They're going to throw the extra shots. They're going to go. They're willing to take risk. That's what you see in these hungry fighters. So I think Michael Holland is going to be hungry. I can't wait for that matchup, but I'm going knockout. But the main event, Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier, the Diamond. Shout out to the Diamond, man. Dustin Poirier, we got to give him respect when respect's due. Been in the UFC for over a decade, put in the work. You know, Islam's kind of relatively new in a way. You know, a lot of people didn't know who he was because he was under Khabib when Khabib was champion, undefeated in his career. But we look at Islam and saying, all right, bro, like, if you want to be like Khabib, like, all right, like, move up in weight, bro. Like, that's all I'm saying about Islam. I have nothing to knock besides move up to 170. Don't move down to 145. You're at 155 right now. Like, that's little dog weight. Move up to 170 here. You know, that's what I walk around about, 170, 180. So if I were to fight in the UFC, I would fight at 170. I would fight close to my natural weight class. I'm not trying to cut all this weight and go down and skinny and stuff. Like, could you imagine, like, Sugar Sean O'Malley fighting at, like, 170? Like, that's his natural weight, 170, dude. Like, and he's cutting all the way down to 135. Like, that's not healthy long term. You're cutting all this weight. You're easier to get knocked out. Your brain's dehydrated. So I think there's long-term effects of these fighters cutting all this weight, you know, within a month. Like, that's crazy to me, dude. Fight at your natural weight class. Like, that's all I'm saying about Islam. Even though Islam's probably going to win this fight, I think he's going to really manhandle Dustin Poirier. Even though that sounds pretty silly, right? With Dustin Poirier doing some crazy stuff in the UFC, big fights after big fights, big knockouts after big knockouts. But I just think Dustin Poirier, the only method of victory to beat Islam is by knockout. There's no other way. We could sit up here and say, yeah, he's going to take him down. No. Dustin Poirier does not want to wrestle with Islam. Islam's an expert. He learned from his daddy, Khabib, and that's how he's a great grappler, dude. I'm telling you right now, Islam's going to shoot for takedowns, and he's going to succeed at them. Unless Dustin Poirier comes out with a great game plan to stop these takedowns, and that's how you fight against wrestlers. True wrestlers, if you're fighting a true wrestler, you're telling yourself, hey, what am I going to do to prevent him from taking me down? Because once he cannot take me down, he's going to lose confidence in the fight, and that's when he's going to start to get shaky. So I think that's the greatest thing that you can do against the wrestler is don't let him take you down. Defend his takedowns. Understand when he's going to shoot. Understand that he's going to shoot when he throws his left or right hook. That's what you got to know. So I think Dustin Poirier is going to look sharp. I think it's going to be very close, but I think it's probably going to go by decision unless Dustin Poirier happens to knock Islam out. But if he doesn't knock out Islam, I think Islam wins by decision. Is still the champion at lightweight champion, and that's how it's going to be. So shout to Islam, shout to Dustin Poirier. UFC 302 is going to be iconic. I can't wait till UFC 303 with Conor, the Notorious McGregor. It's the Clouded with Cab show. Let's go!